Well, good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this. Yes, as we get into Wednesday, we are at hump day. We're getting into the middle. We got a really busy week of earnings, but yesterday you wouldn't have known that to actually look over at the Dow and the S&P. You look over and you see that really trading in a very tight range, not a whole lot of movement. As a matter of fact, S&P eased back from record highs back into the red just barely. And then you look over at the Dow, also eased back just a little bit. It finished, call it green, but it was close to flat as well. It was the Nasdaq really that was the one that was under some pressure, stayed under some pressure. It was in a channel for most of the day, finishing down, call it around 50 points to the downside. Still holding on though to that 14,000 and actually building on that today. But we'll get into that in just a second. Crude, we talk about crude oil all the time. We talk about a lot of the different sectors that are moving. Well, I'll tell you what, crude steadily, kind of slowly, kind of quietly, right around that 63 level yesterday. So that stood out. And the 10-year, because everybody was focused on so many other different aspects of the market yesterday because of earnings, understandable, but didn't hear a lot of conversation yesterday about the 10-year. And the 10-year was up about 3% yesterday, 1.62. And that's something maybe to just keep at least, a little vision of that as you're going through your trading day, because that has been very, very important. We've talked about that a lot, specifically with a lot of these different financials. Bitcoin had another big day. It was up about 2% yesterday, so that definitely stood out and trading near or around sort of, let's call it that 55,000 level. So it's rallied off of some of those lows that we were definitely, many people were concerned about when we were talking about a lot of these cryptocurrencies, some of the pressures and all that volatility that we'd had a little bit tighter yesterday, and that push up to the upside, as I say, about 2%. Volatility, what volatility? We're trading right around that 17, 18 level and finished up right in between there, right around 1750 yesterday. Volume is interesting because the volume yesterday definitely stood out as slower. 28 million in any other year is not considered all that slow. But because of the pandemic, because of those huge numbers we had last year and the start of this year, 28,000 does feel a little bit ho-hum, especially when you consider where we are right now in the earnings season. So you would expect a little bit more activity. Well, we're not getting what we expected. Financials, industrials, energy. That was your leadership yesterday. They were very strong, but they were getting neutralized out. A lot of that having to do with healthcare, utilities, some of those that were a little bit lower. Now, what stood out yesterday? There were two earnings that definitely stood out. Tesla was one. It was down about 4 some odd percent. But really what stood out most was UPS and that absolutely extraordinary run that made yesterday post earnings. And actually it was up as much as over 11%. I think it finished down off of that, but still above a 10% move to the upside. And oh, by the way, it's on the move once again today. We did have some unusual buying in UPS yesterday, which is really interesting. You come after earnings, stock makes this big run to the upside, and they come right back in with some short-term call buying again, looking for this thing to maybe crack through this 200 level. Looks like we're getting pretty close because the last I looked, trading right around 198. So a nice big push to the upside. We had a lot of earnings come out last night, and I'm going to get into that in just a second as far as some of the influence and what really stood out. But when we get into today, a little bit of pressure on the markets early in terms of the Dow, down about 60 points. Earnings season just keeps on rolling along. We had last night's, we had this morning's, and all the rest. NASDAQ down just a little bit. We opened. Dow was down about 50, 60 points. NASDAQ, not so bad, down about 15 points. Quickly, we were down over 100 plus points. And then you get towards 9 o'clock, we were actually down about 150. Last I looked, we were down somewhere between 140 and 150 again. But NASDAQ kind of stair-stepping off of those negative levels. Last I looked, it was up positive by about 10 points. Not a big range yet for the NASDAQ, so nothing to get too excited about. Crude, however, keeps on building. When you look at the price of oil, 63.60, 63.70, that's where we're moving today. And again, that's why we're seeing the leadership coming from the energy sector, with Bitcoin just kind of hovering around that 55,000 level. So let's get to some of those earnings. We had Microsoft, we had Google, we had AMD, we had Starbucks, we had Amgen. Now, what is the pressure right now on the markets? Well, in terms of the Dow, take a look at Amgen. Amgen getting hammered pretty good after their earnings. They were down about 6% earlier. They were down even a little bit more the last I looked. Google, on the other hand, strong numbers. That stock was moving very, very nicely and new highs. It was actually, last I looked, up about 4 or 5% to the upside. So that was a nice move. Microsoft, on the other hand, was down about 2%. Then it started to slide a little bit further. So we'll keep an eye on this. Microsoft was off significantly last night. It got a little bit better today. It's now starting to push towards some of those levels where it was last night. And that's exactly how it can play out sometimes. Pretty interesting. As far as today, though, now we got Boeing. Boeing under a little bit of pressure, but Spotify having a pretty nice, also having a little bit of issue. There are a lot of different earnings out there that are kind of pushing things around a little bit. Some of the bigger names, obviously, the ones that we want to focus on, and the Boeings of the world. Communications, that was up pretty significantly early on. A lot of that having to do with what's going on with Google. We had also the price of oil, as I mentioned, so energy definitely in a strong position. Consumer staples kind of moved around a little bit to the upside today after being one of the laggers as well. Tech getting hit just a little bit, not a lot, but it was getting hit. It was down about 0.6% or so, with the chips down about 1%. We heard from AMD, we've heard from others as well. So the chips, not a huge move just yet, but last I looked, like I say, they were down about 1%. Got two unusual options, and then everybody is off into the races to see what's going on for the rest of the day. GSX. Now, this is an interesting name. It's a Chinese name, GSX Technology. It's a tech educational company out of China. So stock was trading right around 34.91. This is the very first hit of the day today in the trading of unusual. So stock's already moving around a little bit, but it was trading 34.90. We had a buyer of 10,000 of the May 14th expiring 37 calls. Those are going for about $2.70. These are not cheap. That's a pretty large trade when you consider 10,000 were bought for something just a little bit south of $3. Big trade. But they also did do some hedging, and they were selling the 50 calls out there in May as well against this position, trying to give a little bit of that premium that is getting paid for on these 37s, trying to dig into that a little bit. So a smart trade, and actually capping a little bit of the upside, saying, you know what, it's okay. Probably not going to be going through 50 between now and May 14th. Secondly, I've got Snap. Now, this is one of these names that does hit fairly frequently for us. Snap was trading just underneath $59 a share. It's been a little bit all over the place. I think we were down in the 57s. We got up into the 59s, but when it was trading just below 59, 58.87, we had a buyer of 4,900 of Fridays, which is right on top of us now, but Friday's expiring 59 calls. These are the April calls. Those are going for about, call it almost $1 to about $1.40, depending on where they started. Obviously, the early entries got in there under $1, and then the folks that continue to come in as the stock starts to move up, those options are moving up along the way as well, especially with that kind of demand. Folks, have a great day of trading. Education is key. Education is what you get from the Market Rebellion team. They can really tell you a lot about all of the different Greeks and all the different pricing. Got to check it out each and every day. By the way, I'm wearing the Take shirt today. Got to tell you something. So it's getting closer and closer. Twin Cities Lime. It's a unbelievable charity. My wife is the founder of it. She's done an amazing job. We got a great board of directors. We got that on May 21st. I just want to remind people, when they buy anything, the Take, the Giddy Up, the Bull, and all that kind of stuff over at a place called the Minnesotan, if you do that, a portion of any of the sales of the products that are involved with me goes towards Twin Cities Lime. So you're doing somebody a favor, plus you're getting a great shirt. Most comfortable shirt I've ever owned. Folks, have a great day of trading. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.